Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in to First Post America. I'm Eric Hammond. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And today we've got the latest on President Donald Trump's phone call with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and a rare look into the private life of Russian President Vladimir Putin. All of this and more coming up, but first, a look at the latest headlines. A Russian drone strike on a bus in central Ukraine kills 9 people and wounds dozens. The strike comes days after President Vladimir Putin suggested he was open to talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The United Kingdom, Germany, France call on Israel to stop blocking humanitarian aid to Gaza as Palestinians continue to face the imminent threat of famine. A fast-moving wildfire in the state of New Jersey scorches more than 8,500 acres of land and forces over 3,000 residents to evacuate. The U.S. Army will now require female soldiers in combat roles to pass the same fitness test as their male counterparts. The move is expected to drastically cut the number of women qualifying for such positions. And OpenAI shows interest in buying Google's Chrome if antitrust enforcers force the company to sell the popular web browser to restore the competition in online search. We begin here in Washington, where President Donald Trump held a telephone conversation with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday, where he strongly condemned the latest terror attack that sent shockwaves across India. The attack took place in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam town, which is a popular destination for tourists in the scenic mountainous region. Terrorists opened fire, killing at least 26 people, including a tourist from neighboring Nepal, and wounded around 40 others. President Donald Trump extended his full support to India to bring justice to the perpetrators of the heinous attack. The commander-in-chief also denounced the violence on his social media platform, Truth Social, offering his sympathies to the victims' families. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance, who is currently in India on a 4-day trip with his family, also expressed condolences over the deadly terror attack.
Usha and I extend our condolences to the victims of the devastating terrorist attack in Pahalgam, India. Over the past few days, we have been overcome with the beauty of this country and its people. Our thoughts and prayers are with them as they mourn this horrific attack.
In a social media post on X, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the United States stands with India during such tough times. And earlier, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said President Donald Trump was briefed on the brutal attack by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who called it a terrible tragedy.
In regards to the terrorist attack that took place in India earlier today, the president has been briefed by the National Security Advisor, and he's being kept up to speed as more facts are learned. What we know already is dozens were killed and even more were injured in a brutal terrorist attack in a popular tourist location in South Kashmir.
Following the massacre, Prime Minister Modi cut short his 2-day visit to Saudi Arabia and returned to New Delhi early Wednesday. Well, now the new resistance front, a shadow group of Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba terror group, has claimed responsibility for the deadliest attack in Kashmir since 2019. Meanwhile, Indian security forces have launched a major manhunt and are combing the area to track down the terrorists, with the sketches of at least 3 suspects already being released. And staying in Washington, President Donald Trump has signaled a potential U-turn on his trade war with China. During a press conference at the White House on Tuesday, the commander-in-chief said high tariffs on Chinese goods will come down substantially. However, the president made it clear that the tariffs would not be reduced to 0.
145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It got up to there. We were talking about fentanyl, where, various elements built it up to 145. No, it won't be anywhere near that high.
It'll come down to if you have
It'll come down substantially, but it won't be 0. It used to be 0. We were just destroyed. China was taking us for a ride, and just not going to have. It's not going to happen.
President Trump added that he has a great relationship with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and he wants Washington and Beijing to exist together happily.
We're going to be very good to China, have a great relationship with President Xi, but they would make billions and billions and billions of dollars a year, and they would build their military out of the United States and what they made, so that won't happen. But they're going to do very well, and I think they're going to be happy, and I think we're going to live together very happily and ideally work together. So I think it's going to work out very well. But no, it's at 145%. There will not be anywhere near that number.
Now, these remarks were in response to earlier comments by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who expects a de-escalation in the trade war between the world's two biggest economies. The Trump administration's shift in tone has caught the eyes of China with the hashtag #TrumpChickenOut, racking up over 100 million views on Chinese social media platform Weibo. Meanwhile, the Chinese government said it is willing to engage in trade talks with Washington amid fears of a global recession. Notably, the Trump administration has placed import taxes up to 245% on China and has refused to back down. So far, Beijing has retaliated with 125% tariffs on U.S. goods, restricted the export of critical minerals, reduced the number of Hollywood films shown in the country, and returned at least 2 Boeing jets. And even though President Donald Trump hopes to strike a trade deal with Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader has launched a charm offensive with regional trade partners, all the while pushing back against American tariffs.
In the face of external uncertainties, China will insist on joining hands rather than throwing punches, tearing down walls instead of building barriers, connecting instead of decoupling. We will continue to expand the circle of trade friends, become a stronger magnet for investment, develop with high quality and open to the outside world at a high level, to inject more stability and positive energy into the world economy.
On Monday, China also warned other countries against making trade deals with the United States at its expense. And now it's unclear if President Trump will succeed in reaching an agreement with China, as Beijing believes it too is on equal footing. And now to the Dominican Republic, where hospitals in the country have become the front line of a growing immigration crackdown. In just one day, 87 Haitian women and 48 children, many of them newborns, were arrested from maternity wards across the country. Over half of the women were still pregnant, and the government says it's enforcing border control, but human rights groups say they are targeting the most vulnerable. Here's our story with more.
In scenes more fitting of a dystopian drama than a maternity ward, immigration officers in the Dominican Republic have begun sweeping arrests of undocumented Haitian migrants, targeting some of the most vulnerable, pregnant women and new mothers. This week alone, 87 women and 48 children were rounded up in hospitals and maternity wards across the nation in a sweeping campaign to curb migration from neighboring Haiti. The country crippled by poverty, gang violence and political turmoil. More than half of the detained women were still pregnant. The rest had just given birth, and not a single man was arrested. In the capital, Santo Domingo, reports emerged of the harrowing immigration crackdown. 3 women cradling their newborns were ushered into vehicles by immigration officers outside a hospital. Their destination, a detention center where they were fingerprinted, photographed and prepared for deportation.
That's not right. It's an abuse, because children are innocent. They are innocent. They could take the woman, but not the baby, not a newborn.
Immigration authorities claim that the women were treated with dignity and given food. But can this nourishment cushion the trauma of being taken from a hospital bed to a holding cell?
If a woman gave birth today, they can't take her today, because they don't know what will happen. And if she has a C-section, they don't know what is going to happen either, because there is never a doctor with her to assist if something happens on the road, with the baby or with her.
Under a controversial protocol, Dominican hospitals are now instructed to demand legal identification, proof of employment, residence documentation, and payment before admitting migrants, turning what should be sanctuaries of healing into checkpoints of fear.
We will receive those individuals, and those who are not in regular status and cannot justify their stay in the Dominican Republic will have arrangements made on-site for repatriation to their place of origin.
For Dominican President Luis Abinader, who has adopted a hardline stance on Haitian migration since assuming office in 2020, this is part of a broader plan. The government insists that while hospitals may offer life-saving care, undocumented migrants will face expulsion the moment they leave the operating table. The numbers are staggering. In just first 3 months of 2025, the Dominican Republic has deported 86,000 Haitians. This is on pace to eclipse the 276,000 expelled in all of 2024. A wall between two nations is being extended, and more troops have been sent to guard the border that slices through the island of Hispaniola. But the haunting images tell a different story of women clutching their babies, escorted not by nurses but by armed officers. A nation's borders are being enforced not only at its edges but in its hospital beds, its nurseries and its delivery rooms. And as the cries of newborns echo through detention vans, the question remains: who is protecting the innocent?
And now to Canada, where a dramatic political turnaround is reshaping the landscape just days before the federal election on April 28th. Prime Minister Mark Carney, who is only 2 months into his political career, has managed to reverse the fortunes of the ruling Liberal Party, which under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was struggling with public dissatisfaction over inflation, immigration, and a worsening housing crisis. Polls now show the Liberals holding a lead of 3 to 5 points over the Conservatives, with projections suggesting they could win a majority of the 343-seat Canadian Parliament. In fact, a rolling 3-day Nanos poll released this week puts Liberal support at 43.7%, while the Conservatives stand at 36.3%. And the New Democrats follow with just 10.7%. Advanced voting began last Friday with a record 7.3 million Canadians having already cast their ballots. In taking the election campaign to Quebec, Prime Minister Carney assured the voters that he is the only one who can protect the predominantly French-speaking province from President Donald Trump.
This is a real crisis, a real situation. The question is, within a week's time, who's going to be negotiating with President Trump and who's going to be managing the finances of this country? Is it going to be François-Philippe Champagne and myself and our team? Or is it going to be a group that made it up on a napkin, released it a couple of days before the election, and has never taken responsibility for these types of decisions in the past? That's the question.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was also not far behind to sway the Canadian voters. Sharpening his focus on issues like housing affordability and taxation, Poilievre continued to appeal to middle-class voters, with at least 28% believing he will fight for them, slightly ahead of Prime Minister Carney's 24%.
We need a new Conservative government for a change that will axe taxes, greenlight construction of homes, mines, pipelines, LNG plants, bring home our jobs so that we can reinforce our economic fortress against the Americans. In the short term, my government has already proposed an immediate response to help our seniors.
Now, despite recent Conservative gains, especially in British Columbia and Western provinces, the Liberals maintain a more efficient vote distribution, giving them a clear advantage in seat projections. So as the clock ticks down to Election Day, one question remains on the minds of Canadians. Can Prime Minister Carney's last-minute surge hold firm, or will the ground shift once more in the final moments? And today we end in Russia, where the veil of secrecy surrounding Vladimir Putin's private life has been dramatically pierced. For the first time ever, images have surfaced of a child believed to be the Russian president's long-rumored son with Olympic gymnast Alina Kabeva. As per several reports, the boy, hidden from public view for over a decade, lives under intense security and isolation within Putin's heavily guarded residences. Leaked by an anti-Kremlin Telegram channel, the photos offer a rare glimpse into a life of luxury, control, and silence, and questions swirl around the child's identity and future. Our next report gets you more.
Behind palace walls, shielded by armed guards and cloaked in silence, lives a boy few knew existed until now. A single photo, leaked by the anti-Kremlin telegram channel Vachika Ogpu, has peeled back the curtain on what may be Vladimir Putin's most closely guarded secret. A 10-year-old son named Ivan Vladimirovich Putin. Described as the loneliest boy in Russia, Ivan doesn't go to school. He doesn't play in parks. He doesn't know what it's like to fight over toys or sneak an extra dessert. His world is carved from silence and surveillance, allegedly hiding in Switzerland with governesses, language tutors, and stoic bodyguards from Russia's FSO, the same elite force that guards his father. Reports claim Ivan is the son of Putin and Alina Kabaeva, the 41-year-old Olympic rhythmic gymnast, long rumored to be the Russian leader's lover. Their alleged affair dates back to at least 2008, though neither has ever confirmed it. Kabaeva once described her mystery man as a great man, blushing on national television. While many suspected, few dared to say it. She was speaking about Vladimir Putin. Reports point out that the child's life is one of absolute luxury, but also absolute isolation. He and his younger brother, Vladimir Putin Jr., aged 4, are educated within the gilded walls of Putin's private residences in Switzerland like modern-day Romanovs. They travel in bulletproof trains and fly in private jets. Yet, Ivan has quirks that break the palace's eerie stillness. He's obsessed with Disney films and often dresses up as characters. In fact, when Ivan was born in 2015 at a Swiss clinic in Lugano, sources say Putin cried out with joy, "Hooray, finally a boy." The Russian strongman, who's already rumored to have twin daughters with Kabaeva, was said to be over the moon. However, during a televised Q&A session 5 months ago, Putin reportedly let something slip. Speaking of fairy tales, he smiled faintly and said, "I sometimes watch these with my little ones." State media quickly sanitized the moment, translating it as junior family members. Now the world is piecing together the lives hidden behind palace walls. Dossier Center has confirmed the existence of 4 children between Putin and Kabaeva, 2 boys and 2 girls. And there may be more. One telegram channel claims that Kabaeva is pregnant again. If true, another child may be born into the same cloistered existence of wealth and watchmen. So even though the photo is out, the questions are many. And somewhere in the Swiss Alps, the story may just be beginning.
That's Firstpost America for this Wednesday, April 23rd. I'm Eric Ham, signing off from our studios here in Washington, D.C. Thanks, everyone, for spending time with us today, and we look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly. Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
votes for it, not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.